You're entering a Narnia kind of C.S. Lewis, Tolkien kind of world.
This is the Gospel of Musical Theater, a priestly look at some of your favorite musicals, with your hosts, Cathedral Deans and Musical Theater Queens, Nathan LaRude and Peter Elliott.
It's the Gospel of Musical Theater. My name is Nathan.
Hey, I'm Peter.
And we're here with a trigger warning today, friends.
Let it go. Let it go.
Let it go. Let it go. Can't hold it back anymore. If you are a caregiver or have been a caregiver of a small child, probably. I was going to say a small girl, but I think boys are just as susceptible to the charms of Frozen. Over the past 10 years or so. This film came out in 2013, I want to say, 2013, yep. 14. So we're about a decade into the Frozen phenomenon.
Whoa, that's unbelievable. I mean...
I know, isn't that interesting? Yeah.
I still think of it as a new film, but that's...
I do too, but there's a whole generation of, what should we say, preteens now, who grew up on this film. My sense is I know a lot of parents who could do without this film and sort of wish that Disney had just shelved it, just because, earworm slash... actually, the screenwriter, Jennifer... Oh, I'm not going to get her name. Jennifer Lee, I believe, is the screenwriter, co-director of this film. First woman to helm a Disney film, which is significant. Came in to work on the script and was involved in the development of the film. And she said in an interview not that long ago, people used to come up to me and thank me, right? Like, oh, you're the one that, like Frozen, oh, I know that song. And she said, now I find myself having to apologize because so many people are so tired of that song. And so, yes, trigger warning.
Trigger warning, and it is legitimately a musical. I mean, it transferred onto the Broadway stage.
It is a Broadway musical now. Yep.
Yep, by Robert Lopez and his wife, Kristen Anderson Lopez. And he's the dude who co-wrote Book of Mormon, Avenue Q, and is writing in the golden age style of American musical theater. And I think that's part of the reason that for the popularity of the film is the songs almost slip into I must have heard that before. I know the melodies. Not that they're derivative or anything like that. I mean, they're fresh, they're new, but they really fall into the golden age of musical theater.
Broadway, the Broadway canon. I think that's right. Yeah. Robert Lopez is the composer, is that right? And his wife is the lyricist, is that?
I think that's the way it works, yeah.
Yeah, he has got, I think about the music to the Book of Mormon, Avenue Q, he's got a gift for catchy, pop-infused, right? Like, this is not, it's not Rodgers and Hammerstein. He's writing out of a slightly different musical idiom, but it is that earworm quality that you want in a cultural. I mean, Let It Go became a cultural phenomenon. Won an Academy Award. I remember I preached a sermon on it 10 years ago when it was new, before everybody had been inundated with Let It Go. And I remember reading an article where a Disney exec was quoted as having, he's like, we got an early cassette tape of the music for Frozen with the Lopez's singing. And it's like, I played Let It Go in my car over and over. I just couldn't get this song out of him before any of this was 4 years while the film was in development. So they knew going into this thing, Let It Go was, and maybe we at one point, as we talk about kind of how that song functions in the film, how that song functions in terms of Elsa's character, my sense is writing that song also completely changed the trajectory of the story that the filmmakers thought they were telling, right? Elsa, the Snow Queen in the Anderson short story. So back up here. We should probably rehearse. So Frozen, for the four people that have never heard of this Disney film, is a Disney fairy tale retelling of Hans Christian Andersen's The Snow Queen. Now, it basically bears absolutely no resemblance to the Hans Christian Andersen. No. Using some of the same characters and the same setting. But basically, it's an entirely new story built around the architecture.
That was in development for years. This was an idea within Disney.
Walt Disney wanted to do it in the 40s. Yeah. It was like they were trying to do a Hans Christian Andersen thing for a long time. They did end up doing The Little Mermaid, which bears a slightly closer resemblance to the Andersen story, although then departs from it in all the Disney sorts of... Someday we'll talk about The Little Mermaid, because that is also a, canonical Broadway musical, right?
And I think, this is our... Summer
at the movies.
At the movies.
Please Cars will buzz, kids will blow dandelion fuzz, and I'll be doing whatever snow does in summer. A drink in my hand, my snow up against the burning sand, probably getting gorgeously tanned in summer. I'll finally see a summer breeze blow away a winter storm, and find out what happens to solid water when it gets warm. And I can't wait to see what my buddies all think of me. Just imagine how much cooler I'll be in summer.
We do want to do a Disney series. And
well, because I was thinking about this morning. The first time that you and I ever taught a class on the theology of Broadway musicals was a summer retreat at Sorrento Center. It was
2019.
2019. Gosh, it was that long ago. Yeah. And I remember sitting in that room talking, and one of our first questions was, when did you fall in love with musicals? You know, kind of going around the room. And a lot of people who were your generation or right around that, it was LPs, it was Rodgers and Hammerstein, it was My Fair Lady, it was the golden era, because you all had that in your record collection. For my generation, and I never really thought about this until I started hearing people my age say, it was The Little Mermaid, it was Beauty and the Beast, it was Aladdin. And that's my sense too, right? Is my first Broadway musical was probably The Little Mermaid. That's what introduced me to the idea of Under the Sea was the first production number. And I remember sitting in the theater, I think I was 8 or 9, just mesmerized by a high energy production, animated, obviously, production number. But that's what set me up to be able to then go to a Broadway show and see a whole company doing a big, fun number and know what I was seeing, right? Little Mermaid taught me the Broadway form. So Elsa, Frozen, is doing that now for a new generation, right? Using the Broadway musical structure, but Disneyfying it, we might say. And I suppose, like, inculcating a whole new generation of kids into the wonders of musicals, which I think is kind of what Frozen is doing.
And just while we sort of unfold the plot, I want to give a shout out to the choral singing in Frozen. And it begins right with the very, very first song.
That's a beautiful.
It's beautiful. It's got this indigenous kind of drum beat.
My understanding is it's like Sami folk singing. I don't really know that much about this, but it's a sort of indigenized folk tradition in Norway, I think upper parts of Russia, Finland, kind of the Scandinavian countries, this indigenous sort of tribal way. That's a complicated word to use, but an indigenous musical tradition that's native to that land that is call and responsey. It's guttural, but high energy. And then when it's choralized, right, almost sounds like shape note singing. It's this very intense, harmonized, shouted, exuberant singing.
And beginning with the sound of the pickaxes on the ice, immediately with this music and the visuals that accompany it, which are stunning, absolutely stunning, that you're entering an imaginative world. You're entering a Narnia kind of C.S. Lewis, Tolkien kind of world where what is going to be unfolded is a fable, is a parable, is a story that is both to touch and move you about the story and delight you, but also I think because the sound of the music, it's also a sacred story in some way. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think that's right. There's a hymnic quality. The film, as Disney films, right, do not really traffic in Christian religion. That was a Walt Disney thing. He didn't want to, but I think he was interested in like creating cultural artifacts that could translate to non-Christian. He was really interested in the African and the Asian market. So like, we can't be too Christian about this because I want this to be able to play in Buddhist countries. So Disney put the kibosh on anything deliberately Judeo-Christian. But there did kind of develop a little bit of a what we might call a Disney gospel, which is all about the power of true love. Good must triumph over evil. There is a theological system at work in Disney fairy tale. Self-actualization. In some ways, it's it's the European fairy tale tradition, sort of updated with and losing some of the darker and more violent elements of Grimm.
And in the early Disney canon, heteronormativity.
Yes, always wins.
And romantic love.
True love's kiss.
True love's kiss.
Which this film plays with.
Yeah,
exactly. We are kind of updating some of those tropes for a contemporary. I mean, this is a female screenwriter. I think she's very interested in telling I'm going to use scare quotes around feminist story, because there's been a lot of discussion on how are the women of Frozen presented? Is this a responsible story to hand to young girls in terms of giving them a lens to understand what it means to be a princess, what it means to be a woman? So lots of complications here, but obviously the film is at least engaging in the complications of being a 21st century woman.
Yes. Yeah.
So updating some of the Disney tropes.
So we have two daughters, one who has a power, Elsa, and it's a power, magical power, supernatural power, that she can freeze things, I guess, that can be used for good, but it plagues her. And then her younger sister, Anna, who has no magical powers, but a wide-eyed wonder at the world and an openness to, kind of a bring it on. So we have these two types, kind of empowered, but demonized by her power in some way, or deeply troubled by her power, and a more naive, would that be a way to characterize these two?
I think that's right. Yeah. I mean, they have an early. So, I mean, one of the things that I think about with Frozen is, emotionally, it's actually kind of complicated story about like repressed childhood trauma in some ways. So Anna and Elsa are playing as little girls, and Elsa is using her powers to create a fun, right? Like she's sort of throwing ice all over the place, and Anna is just delighting in this. And then Anna, starts to fall or something like that, and Elsa, trying to save her in a moment of fear, ends up striking her and knocks her out, right? So Anna has this like forelock of white hair so her parents are, like terrified by this, take Anna to the trolls who bring her back to life, but basically advise the parents, like, we're going to erase all of Anna's memories. It will be easier if you keep these two apart. The parent, it's not that this is all details of plot. The plot gets elided, we're skating through these details very quickly. The point is Anna and Elsa have been kept at distance from each other as mature, they're reaching their parents die, they're raised as orphans, but there's this kind of primal childhood woundedness, like a memory that Elsa carries that Anna does not, although it becomes clear as the film progresses a little bit that she actually does have more memory of the time when she and Elsa were close. Right. So there is some interesting, like, repressed trauma stuff happening between these two girls. But they, the film basically starts as they come to their maturity. Elsa is being crowned queen because she's reached her, she's 18 or whatever. She's reached her majority. Anna falls in love. And that sort of sets off the plot, I suppose, of Frozen.
Right.
When Elsa is infuriated that her sister has fallen in love and has agreed to marry a guy she's just met, she kind of freaks out. The whole kingdom is, becomes frozen. She flees. Her powers are basically revealed to the community. People are horrified. They're terrified by her. There's a group of men, powerful men, who are like, you must get, kill the beast. We're gonna, so she flees. Elsa flees into the mountains and sings the great, this is about a half hour into the film, right? It kind of sings the great Act 1 closer, I suppose, which is where Let It Go happens, the moment where she really takes center stage. Up until this point in the movie, it's really been Anna's story, right? Like she's sort of she's the romantic heroine that we're following, right? We see her kind of meet cute with this prince. We're sort of following her. Elsa's kind of in the shadows, but then as soon as she escapes into the mountains, rips off her glove, sings this incredible power ballad. Now it's Elsa's story in all kinds of ways, right?
Right. And before we come to the power ballad, can I just do a shout out for Love is an Open Door with Kristen Bell and Santino Fantino?
Yeah, that's a fun song, isn't it?
It's a fun song.
I mean, it's crazy.
What?
We finish each other's
sandwiches.
That's what I was gonna say.
I've never met someone who thinks so much like me.
Jinx,
jinx again. Our mental synchronization can have but one explanation.
You
and I
were
just meant to be. Say goodbye to the pain of the past. We don't have to feel it anymore. Love is an open door. Love is an open door. Life can be so much more with you, with you, with you. Love is an open door.
Can I say something crazy? Will you marry me?
Can I say something even crazier? Yes.
And Santino Fontana, who, if I'm saying that right, the harmonies, like, I don't know whether the harmonies were written for him or whether he finds them himself, whether this is his own artistry. And it turns out to be a very ironic song because he turns out to be a scoundrel by the end of it who just wanted to marry into the royal family so that he could gain favor. So he's feigning true love for the first... Yep. He's feigning true love.
He's manipulating Anna.
He's manipulating Anna. And she's so wide-eyed and innocent and wanting to fall in love as, I guess, young girls and young boys do, or find a soulmate.
Yeah, she's been, I mean, like, my sense of at least Anna as a mature young, or a maturer young, how old is she? 16, 17? So she's, you know, like, she's lonely. Like, she misses, you see her, right? Like, still, right? Like, hanging outside of Elsa's door, like, do you want to build a snowman? That's Anna's opening song, right? Like, please somebody play with me. So she's so excited to have the palace open for the first time. Apparently the gates have been shut for years because her parents decreed it must be so to keep Elsa, you know, to keep her powers in check, to keep her safe, I suppose. Anna's just, like, so eager to, and she says, right, like, maybe I'll meet the one, like, maybe, so she's, you know, she wants out of this life, she wants companionship, so she falls for the first guy that, you know, like, looks at her, you know, like, she's just kind of completely smitten with him. As you say, right, like, her heart is totally open, totally undefended. She's never really had to navigate the fact that people might use her, right, like, might take advantage of her openness for their own agenda, which is exactly what happens. This is the prince that she falls in love with.
And this is a song that immediately slips into pop culture zeitgeist, right?
Yep.
It's toony, as you were saying. It's earwormy. When I was getting reacquainted with this music in preparation for today, I was whistling this as I was going out for walks. Love is an open door.
Yeah, it's a catchy song. Yeah,
it's catchy too.
So Snowman. I think every one of the songs in this film. Well, the troll
for the first time forever. For the first time. Is a brilliant
It's a
song.
good Disney romance ballad.
Yeah.
Now, here, right, like, I mean, in the trope of a Disney film, what is being set up for us is this is true love. And the film really depends on, we at least at the first level, the audience needs to buy into this is the myth of the, right? Like, they meet, they fall in love, they get engaged. Yeah. And in the context of a Disney film, that is normal, right? Like, that is the Disney film that we are all, that's Snow White, that's Sleeping Beauty, that's Cinderella. That is the Disney princess arc, which is that she sees her prince for the first time, and 5 minutes later they're married. And that is happily ever after. Now, the film does then play with that, right? And sort of in the second act, Anna goes in search of Elsa, who has, right, gone into the woods. She's, you know, meets up with, what's the name of the Jonathan Groff woodsman ice cutter guy?
Christoph.
There we go, Christoph.
Christoph and Olaf.
All of the tween fans of Frozen are horrified that I can't remember the name.
Jonathan Groff, I mean,
Jonathan
one of our great
Groff.
queer icons.
I know, and he's so charming as that. He's got it. Yeah, he like pals around with his reindeer. He's got like a weird thing with his buddy, the reindeer. They like spend too much time together and seem to have some kind of weird codependency. He's been raised by trolls, which we learn later on. He actually witnessed Anna and Anna's parents bringing her to the trolls, and kind of witnessed. So he's a part of this early, you know, kind of childhood trauma that Anna and Elsa share. But he becomes kind of Anna's companion through the wilderness to kind of try to get her to Elsa. Saves her from this snow monster guy. That's not important, I suppose, at this point. But he's the first one to say, wait a minute, like, you agreed to marry a guy that you met like, that's not how this works, girl. Like, that's stupid. Yeah. Like, do you know anything about, do you know his favorite color? Do you know, what if he picks his nose and eats it? And then he said, all men do. Guys do. And it's, at the end of the film, there's a little disclaimer. It's like, that is the opinion of the screenwriters and does not necessarily reflect the opinion of the Walt Disney Corporation. But my sense is, like, there is some deep truth-telling that's happening here about, like, he's saying, like, Anna, you don't have any experience of men. Men, like, I mean, there's a lot to what it is to be the male of the species that you should think about before you just trust this guy. And there's a part of me that's like, yeah, like, like that. I mean, I recognize some of that caution. It's the same, it's the same caution whenever you watch a Disney film and you're like, wait a minute, this is not a responsible narrative to hand to anybody, that you should marry the first person that you develop a crush on. That's like, no, that's not love. That's infatuation. That's projection. That's all kinds of things. But it's not love. So I do love that the film kind of begins then to detach itself a little bit from the Disney narrative.
Yes.
To provide some different ways of thinking. So that then becomes kind of the animating device of the second act of the film, right? Anna must return to Allendale to perform an act of true love. An act of true love. It's not quite called True Love's Kiss, but this is sort of the myth around, right? Like, the act of true love is what can save the community. Winter will lift and things can return to normal. So... And this is where the details of the plot it's like, is Elsa supposed to do... But anyway, the point is, they try to get her back so that she can kiss the prince that she's fallen in love with, right? Like, it's the Disney kiss. If we can just put the princess and the prince together, if they can kiss, the curse will be lifted and everything will return to normal. Turns out the guy's a dick. He, he drops her, like, oh, Anna, it's a shame that no one's gonna love you that much. Like, that scene, the scene where it's like she reunites with the prince and he basically reveals to her, like, I'm just using you. No one actually, and says the horrible thing to the girl who just wants someone to care about her, which is no one will ever love you. And like and then it does kind of destroy her, right? Like, I mean, like, what a crushing thing. He has read her psychology like exactly right and knows exactly the thing that will destroy or almost destroy this girl, which is like no one will love you for yourself. Turns out there is someone in Anna's life who there's actually a couple people who actually do have something like a truer love for her. One of them is Kristoff, who's, like, that's the sort of the dark horse that we've been rooting for all the way through. But then the great redemptive moment in the film is that Elsa and Anna have that's true love in the film. It's a love between these two sisters. So actually, Anna then becomes the redemptive agent by sacrificing herself, I suppose, before, Hans is getting ready to kill Elsa. Anna intervenes. She's turned to ice. It's a very sort of Hans Christian Andersen-y like moment, right? Like, the ice sculpture is what saves Elsa. That's the act of true love. Everybody comes back to life and everybody lives happily ever after. It's all good at that point.
So, yeah. So what do you make, just to get back to Let It Go, what do you make of Elsa's gift curse? What is that she has to turn things to ice? Her magical powers. And why does she have to... I mean, I understand she has to get away, I guess, escape from the royal court, escape from... the damage that she has inflicted on her sister, on her country. And I guess Elsa needs to find herself in isolation and retreat. Is this kind of a vision quest? Is this a finding her true self? And then when she finds it, she can let it go and be transformed. I mean, I'm really curious about that. And because I want to get with you to the moment of sacrifice. Yeah. But I think we need to touch base just with Let It Go for a minute here.
On Elsa. Yeah. No, I think that's right. Yeah, the film I think is inviting us to understand that as a moment of self-actualization, right? Like, there is great freedom in the song anyway, when she like rips off the gloves. She's been wearing gloves her whole life to try to keep her powers in check. And she realizes, like, oh, it's not a curse. It's like, I can create a world for myself with these powers, right? Like, let it go, let your, like, own your power, basically.
The snow glows white on the mountain tonight, not a footprint to be seen. A kingdom of isolation, and it looks like I'm the queen. The wind is howling like this swirling storm inside. couldn't keep it in. Heaven knows I tried. Don't let them in, don't let them see. Be the good girl you always have to be. Conceal, don't feel, don't let them know. Well, now they know. Let it go, let it go. Can't hold it back anymore. Let it go, let it go. Turn away and slam the door. I don't care what they're going to say. Let the storm rage on. The cold never bothered me anyway.
You have this incredible ability. It's not a curse. It's a blessing, right? This is who I am. So theologically, like the way that if I'm being sympathetic to where I think the film is asking us to go, right? Like this is, I suppose this is Elsa's queerness. This is the thing about her, right? Like, and it's not a problem. It is a problem in the world that she inhabits, right? Like it makes her a pariah. It makes her potentially a figure, a monster. They call her a monster. And there's men who are out for her life. So yeah, it is threatening, can cause harm to people that are, right? Like she accidentally strikes Anna as a child, and I think she's filled with guilt and remorse her entire life, right? Like, I must protect Anna from myself. But that moment, I think, works at the level of character because it's a moment of release. She rips off the gloves. She lets her tightly bound hair, lets it fall. Now, who does Elsa become? She becomes this sort of svelte, like Disney curvy princess in a blue gown. So yeah, exactly. There's a critic who's like, yeah, of course, Elsa's like a moment of female empowerment. She becomes like an even more enticing object to the male gaze because Disney, I guess, right? Like she must still be an attractive, feminine female heroine in a Disney. She has to be a princess.
Well, or her inner beauty is revealed.
Her inner beauty is revealed, sure, right? Like, yes.
And this is is this a coming out story? Is this the spirituality of coming out? Having a gift from our earliest years, just speaking as two queer men now, that is discounted, shamed. It
can hurt the people around you. Yes, exactly. Yeah. It's a problem that needs to be solved. I mean, sometimes, those scenes where Elsa's dad basically instructs, like, don't conceal, don't feel, don't let it show. Like, he gives her the gloves, and basically, like, he gives her this mantra. And, like, and there is a little, that's a moment in the film that, I'm a little chilled, right? Like by the image of a loving, protective father. And what is she, like 5, 6, 7? Like, put these gloves on. No one can see this. Like I have my own version of memories like that, right? Where it's like, my parents were aware there was a thing that could potentially like cause me real harm in the world. And it was never that deliberate, right? And also I couldn't turn the floor to ice. But like, I think a lot of us as queer people have a version of that story in our life, right? The thing that we kept hidden for so long, often because our parents knew and they gave us, out of love, I suppose, out of their most protective instincts, a way to hide that from the world in order to keep us safe.
Yeah. Well, I think, being queer, growing up in my generation anyway, the concern was twofold. One was the sadness that would make the lack of happiness in a life.
Yep.
That it was impossible.
You're destined to be be for the rest of your life. You'll never find a partner. It's
the Tennessee Williams narrative in play after his of, alcoholic, sad,
depressed, and they eventually kill themselves exactly. Yeah.
So that trajectory. So both for yourself and for the harm that you could cause others if you, I think back on wanting to be, I wanted to have more boy friends, right? I got along naturally much easier with girls. I don't know about you.
Always.
And I long to have, I would just say, a friend who's a boy. Now when I look back at queer little Peter, right, it was really longing for a boyfriend, right? And
yeah, do you want to build a snowman? Yeah.
I want to build a snowman, yeah. And so the journey, I think, for me and for you in different ways and different generations and times was to go to a place where self-actualization
could happen.
Self-actualization feels wrong. It's self-affirmation. It's discovery and affirmation of a true self and understanding it to be gift, not curse.
Yes, and that is the part of Elsa's trajectory that does feel to me very queer coded. I'm gonna and that, I mean, that got picked up when the film was released, mostly by conservative Christian commentators who were taking the film to task for, right? Like the kind of initial Christian response to Frozen was, this is Disney, progressive Disney trying to push the gay agenda down our children's throats. Don't take your kids to Frozen. And actually the way that there's this conservative pastor who preached a sermon, he's like, here's why, right? Like Elsa is made a pariah, so she's obviously queer because this is right. Like, and by the end of the film, the problem here is that she returns to society, and what's revealed is that she's not the problem, society is the problem. That's the gay agenda. Right? That's what they want you to believe, which is there's nothing wrong with them. It's just a society that won't accept them. And there's a piece of me that's like, oh, he gets it. Right? Like, actually, I think he gets it. I don't think that the creators of Frozen are trying in any sort of manipulative behind-the-scenes way to, quote-unquote, craft a queer story here in order to, I mean, certainly not in order to, like, recruit more kids to the cause. I think that's generally the way that conservative Christians will, right? Like, they're trying to make your kids gay. And as you and I both know, you can't, your kids are already gay, right? Your kids are already queerer than you could possibly imagine. That's not our fault. That's just, Frozen, I don't know, whatever. But like, it's so interesting to me that like the initial kind of queer read of Frozen came from conservative Christian commentators who recognized exactly what those filmmakers were doing. Now I think 10 years down the line, it's like, yeah, that is queer coded. I think Elsa has become a little bit of a lesbian icon, fairly or unfairly, right? Like, there's no sense that the story requires her to be queer. Right. Although there is no love interest. I mean, if she's queer, she's almost asexual, I suppose, right? Like there's no, and Elsa's self-actualization, and this actually is a piece that I want to think about a little bit. She almost, the way that I want to read that moment is it's almost like it's like St. Francis, like laying his clothes down at his father's feet. Or it's like the Desert Fathers, right? Like escaping a corrupt world and going to the desert. Like her way of self-actualization. I mean, this is Jesus in the Gospels, right? Like being baptized and then going into the wilderness for 40 days being tempted. But it's a moment of solitude. And in the Christian tradition, there is a holy place reserved for the hermit, the one who renounces the world, who goes and, the prophets, Elijah in the Old Testament, St. John the Baptist in the New Testament, right? Like these figures who retreat to the wilderness and live alone as in a kind of call from God, right? And we tend to read them as pretty queer-coded. People who are renouncing the domestic life, they're renouncing partnerhood. Now, for a long time, that was the queer story, right? Like we are the ones who will never find happiness in true love because the thing that we've been gifted or cursed with is this queerness that means we're never gonna find a nice girl and settle down, Peter, right? True love's kiss has been denied for us. Now, of course, society has moved on, right? Like we know that yes, actually, queer people are not doomed to lives of desperate loneliness. Like we actually can connect with each other in all kinds of beautiful ways, including intimate partnership that is now sanctioned by the state and by the church. So that story, but like the memory of that older queer narrative, and more to the point, the ways that the church has for thousands of years helped. I want to be careful about this. Given queer people alternatives to heteronormative life, and it has tended to be the priesthood and the monastery and the anchor hold, I suppose, right? Like that is the place where what I want to claim as my queer progenitors in Christian, most of them are the saints. It's Julian of Norwich, it's John the Baptist, it's it's these figures, St. Francis, who renounce the world and go into the wilderness. And so like that's a piece of how I want to read Let It Go. Actually, is a very Christian hymn. It's the hymn of the solitary, right? Like the thing that I want most of all is to be alone with God. Yeah. So I'm gonna create a hermitage for myself. I mean, she creates an ice castle. It's not really clear, like, what is Elsa doing in her, right? Like, I know. Like, she's hanging around in this, like, sparkly blue dress, which is beautiful, and she's got her
all
hair.
fabulous art direction.
It's all fabulous, but it's like, it's literally an ice palace. So, like, what is she doing up there? Is she praying? Is she, I don't know. The film is not interested in that question, and I don't need to belabor that question.
So, as we talk about, I'm remembering, and tell me if I've got this wrong, and maybe I'm making it up. In the there's, I think our listeners will know, there's a whole bunch of Jesus stories that didn't make it into the New Testament, non-canonical Gospels. The non-canonical Gospels. Mm-hmm. And I'm remembering, I can't remember which non-canonical Gospel there's stories of Jesus as a young boy who inadvertently wounds or kills another kid and then raises him to life.
And raises him to life. Yeah, it's like maybe the Gospel of Thomas or something like that.
I wanted to say Thomas. Yeah. We'll have to do some research after this. So, because I think one of the questions at the heart of Frozen is if there is a Christ figure, and I think it is very much a story that you can map the Christian gospel onto, Frozen, is the Christ figure Elsa or Anna? And I think you could argue in some ways, as when you were talking about, Elsa going to the ice palace is kind of like Jesus retreating into the wilderness, kind of that whole movement that you need to get away from the world and discover the divine within you, to let it go.
Yeah. Can't hold it back anymore.
And then you can come back and reintegrate, but changed, transformed. And in the crucial moment, the kind of deconstructed lover's kiss, let's call it that, where you expect it's going to be Jonathan Groff. I mean, we could all wish for Jonathan Groff to give us the lovers. Kristoff, who's going to do the true love's kiss for Anna to bring her back. It is Elsa, in fact, whose love brings Anna back to life.
Well, yes. Yeah. Yes. So what is the redemptive moment there? Is it Anna interposing herself in between? I think Hans is the bad prince who is about ready to kill Elsa. He's got his sword raised, and she uses like the last ounce of strength to interpose herself. She turns to ice in the moment, so she becomes frozen as she becomes Christ on the cross, I suppose. She becomes, like the redemptive figure, frozen in time, interposing herself. So, my sense is that the act of true love that saves Allendale and restores everything to normalcy? Or is that, and then Elsa I think my memory is kind of embraces her sister.
Embraces her. That's the lover's kiss.
Yeah.
And it's not
so that becomes the resurrection moment, right? The film gives us both a crucifixion and a resurrection. So, theologically then, I suppose one way of framing that conversation is this is an atonement theory question, right? What difference does Jesus' death make in the Christian theological? Is it the death? Right, which is how many Christian theologians, right? It's the death on the cross. That can be substitutionary theology, right? Where it's God is so perfect that God demands a victim. So Jesus offers himself as a spotless victim, is crucified on the cross for my sin, for your sin, for the sin of humanity, redeems the world. So that's Anna interposing herself, right? I will take the stab. I will take one for I will die. I will sacrifice myself for my sister's life. That is how a lot of Christian theology has tended to frame the answer to the question of what difference does Jesus, why did Jesus have to die? God demanded it, God is pure, or Satan demanded it. There's different ways that gets, there's different versions of substitutionary atonement that kind of get played out down through the years. But the other way, a different way of thinking about what difference Jesus makes is it's actually not at all, or not just about the death on the cross. It's the resurrection, right? It's the moment where Elsa embraces Anna, that heart is still beating. And that is the true love, right? The power of true. It's the forgiving victim, I suppose, right? This is almost a Girardian sense of it's the pariah figure, Elsa, who has been rejected. So in this sense, she is the Christ figure in the film, right? She embraces. Right.
She has been rejected. She has been transformed through her wilderness
retreat.
Here,
sure, yeah.
Right. Anna has been on a heroine's journey to find her sister again and to bring her back into the world. But it's her love. It's Elsa's, the transformed Elsa's love of Anna that melts the ice, that saves, that is salvation for Anna.
I suppose, right? It's such a temptation, especially as theologians, to treat this as a bind, right? Which version of substitutionary atonement do you? My sense is the film is doing something a little more interesting, which is asking us to think about the two of them saving each other, right? That the relationship between sisters, at least these particular sisters, is such that true love is more complicated than one person doing for the other. It is both of them, right? Like, so it is both the sacrificial love. I'm gonna try to stop the horrible thing from happening from you, even if it means sheltering you with my body. And then it is also the pariah sister choosing to embrace the sister that she was always terrified to love because she was afraid she was going to hurt her. And I mean, bringing her back to life, right? Like restoring a kind. I'm maybe using her powers to do that. That's where we get into the details of the fairy tale. I don't need the details to be perfect, but my sense is this is about a kind of a co-redemption that happens, right? One sister cannot be redeemed without the other. Their love is such that they are both required to complete the act of true love that will restore Allendale to summer.
Yep. And I mean, one of my favorite songs in the whole work is Fixer Upper. Mm-hmm. Again, it's an earworm. And it's got this line at the end. I mean, it's the trolls who are singing about Anna and Christoph, and that, maybe he's not the ideal person. He's a bit of a fixer-upper kind of guy. And she is. And I think at the end of that song, there's a line like, we're all a bit of the fixer-uppers, right? Like, none of us are... and what I take from that, I mean, it's a great tune, and it's an earworm, and it's fun. But it's also, none of us are perfect, right? All of us need each other. We're all a bit of fixer-uppers, right?
What's the issue, dear? Why are you holding back from such a man? Is it the clumpy way he walks?
Or the grumpy way he talks?
Or the pear-shaped, square-shaped weirdness of his feet?
And though we know he washes well, he always ends up sort of smelly.
But you'll never meet a fellow who's as
sensitive and sweet. So he's a bit of a fixer-upper. So he's got a few flaws.
Like his peculiar reindeer.
This thing with the reindeer
that's a little outside of nature's laws.
So he's a bit of a fixer-upper, but this we're certain of. You can fix this fixer-upper up with a little bit of love.
Can we please just stop talking about this? We've got a real, actual problem here.
I'll say. So tell me, dear, is it the way that he runs scared?
Or that he's socially impaired?
Or that he only likes to tinkle in the woods? What?
Are you holding back your fondness due to his unmanly blondness?
Or the way he covers up that he's the honest goose?
He's just a bit of a fixer-upper. He's got a couple of bugs.
Isolation is confirmation of his desperation for healing hugs.
So he's a bit of a fixer-upper, but we know what to do. The way to fix up this fixer-upper is to fix him up with you.
Enough! She is engaged to someone else, okay?
And both Anna and Elsa are also kind of, they're a bit of fixer-uppers, each of them. Elsa with her coldness, her ice queen. I mean, she is the ice queen.
She's literally the ice queen.
Anna with her naivete. Certainly the boys are fixer-uppers, both Hans and Christoph.
Well, Hans is I suppose he's the villain. It's not really clear what happens to him. Does he just get shipped back off home and goes to prey on another princess? I don't know. There's a dark sequel in what happens to Hans. But Christoph and Anna then do seem to find something like traditional heteronormative. They're dating, I suppose, by the end of it, right? Like, so they're in some form of Elsa. Not, it's like she remains a solitary, and at one level, I'm a little disappointed in that, and at another level, like I don't know, it's like I want to, there's a part of me that really wants to protect Elsa in the wilderness. Like, I want there to be space in this world for Elsa to be alone if she needs to be, right? Like and maybe that's the part of me that, like, I'm part of the reason why I'm in the Christian tradition is because there's room for queer solitaries in this, right? Yes. Like and I really want to, and Disney has a hard time with that, right? The Disney gospel, there's not a lot of room for those who choose to not couple. Disney's a pretty binary world in terms of what is he, and to a certain degree, Christianity also, right? Like, there's no sacrament, there's no way to God that bypasses the sacrament of my neighbor. I think Gustavo Gutierrez said that, right? Like, we end up saving each other. Human relationships are one of the profound ways in which God's salvific action is played out in the world. So, right, like, the only way for Elsa to I suppose, be redeemed is to re-engage with her sister, right? She has to find some way of re-engaging that relationship. It is literally a salvific relationship for her. I also want to find space for her to not be coupled at the end of the film. I think that's really astute and really theologically and narratively significant. That Elsa doesn't need somebody else to make her complete. She is actually at her most complete when she's singing Let It Go, Can't Hold It Back Anymore. And it's her on the mountaintop. I suppose with her power, which, I mean, theologically, I could read as her God. You know, like Elsa is firmly grounded in her body and in what her body is able to do, which is astounding. And it's a moment of divinization, right? I mean, like, I think I think about like St. Irenaeus, right? The glory of God is a human being fully alive. We see Elsa in that moment. And it's as profound a moment as any Hollywood film gives us, I think, of a character being divinized before our eyes. Yeah.
And, I mean, interestingly, how Frozen kind of subverts the trope, the usual musical theater trope of having two couples. Like, you would expect that Anna and Kristoff, and then Elsa and insert name here, you know, then you get a soprano, alto, tenor,
you're kind of
bass.
Looking to see, right?
You've got
like,
a
who's
quartet.
Her,
and
who's she going to pair off with?
No, you don't get that. You get a very different story, a very different mythology. And this film, I mean, it's epic. It's one of the fifth highest grossing films of all time.
I think the most successful animated film of all time. I think more than any other.
Until the remake of The Lion King or Frozen 2. And there's going to be a Frozen 3. There's a whole industry around this.
Well, yes, because Disney can't have a successful property without mining it for how much more money can we make off of this. That's unfair, but maybe not entirely.
What that says to me is something about this story hit the time in a way that just exploded in popularity. And it's the humor, it's the art direction, it's the music, it's the whole thing. But it's also the story. It's
also the story. I mean, at one level, it's a princess story, right? Disney has made a ton of money off of princess stories. There's a piece of it wants to say, like, I guess the Walt Disney Company, I don't know about solely responsible, but very responsible for the cult of princess, which I don't, right? Like, my sense is, like, that has not served.
Kind of started
Snow White. I grew up in it, right? But, like, they marketed the hell out of it. It's like, which princess are you? And you could buy lunch boxes. And my sense is, like, there's now multiple... I mean, in some ways, it reminds us of our Barbie conversation, right? This is an industry built on selling womanhood to little girls and giving them and it's always a dress, you know, and then it's, like, woke Disney, right? Well, we're trying to make sure it's not just white girls, certainly not just blonde white girls. So, like, Belle is sort of the first, I suppose, Disney feminist heroine, which is, like, shockingly, she's a brunette and she reads, right? Like, oh my God, what a concept. But, like, that was revolutionary in 1989, whenever that film came out. So then it's like, well, then we've got Jasmine and then we've got Tiana, you know, like, we're trying to Pocahontas. Yikes. Someday we'll talk about Pocahontas and Disney's weird. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. The point is, the brand is trying to give a lot of different skin colors to little girls. Any little girl can be a princess. It doesn't matter the color of your skin. But still, the goal here is be a princess. And finally, by Frozen, I mean, still, two princesses at the center of the thing. But at least we're now starting to unpack a little bit that whole goal. Like, what does it mean to be a princess? And Elsa actually gives us, maybe it's not princess, maybe it's fucking queen, you know? Like, maybe it's not like daddy's little girl who gets married off to a prince to prop up the patriarchy. Maybe the role here is, like, a woman is in charge of the whole fucking country, and she can, like, build ice castles with her power. I mean, I do, at one level, it's like, that is an image of powerful agency, political structural power that I like. And it's interesting to me then that the emotional heart of the film then becomes about sisters. It's, you know, my sense is, like, Elsa became a really popular baby's name over the last 10 years. A lot of that is because little girls wanted to name their baby sister Elsa. Now, isn't that interesting?
Not
right?
Anna.
Like, not on. I mean, maybe Anna too. But my sense is, at least I saw one article about this on the internet, but I find it fascinating because because it rings with my sense of other families I've known, where it's like you give the old, you know, it's like the sister is like 3 or 4 years old, or maybe 5, and she's, like, obsessed with Frozen. You're like, hey, what do you want to name your baby sister? And Elsa is the word that pops out of her mouth, because my sense is, in the context of the film, Elsa is our image of, like, what it means to be a strong sister, right? So yeah, right? Like, why not Anna? Because that's the younger sister. I don't know. But like, my sense is like that name has a sort
Elsa.
of, this is to your point around something about this story, especially for small children, maybe not just girls. A lot of little girls are named Elsa because their older sister or brother wanted to name them Elsa. Now, that is almost like a saint name, you know?
Yeah.
Like there's something that's being invoked here in terms of power and agency, and then the intimacy of a sibling relationship, right? I want an Elsa or I want an Anna. I want to have a relationship with this. I mean, you know, the power of a sibling relationship, somebody who like has come from the same parents that you do and is often just a few years separated. So they are your early play. You do have a lot of repressed memories of like ways in which you hurt each other probably when you were playing. But then like what a powerful story then to grow up and like in the context of the narrative, like it's your siblings who can save you. What a beautiful
thing.
Story.
And here we are, two musical theater queens talking about what it's like to be a princess, right? So,
yeah. I mean, did you
Let
ever
go.
Let it go. Did you ever dress up like a Disney princess when you were a kid? Was that a piece of your?
No, I dressed up like a
you
girl a
escaped
lot,
that.
but not Disney princesses.
Not a Disney.
But you did.
I would.
It was okay.
It was Snow White. I would put a little blanket around. So I was obsessed with Snow White's outfit. It was the yellow dress with I just thought yellow was always my favorite color. I was just obsessed with that. And I would sit outside in our house and I would sing. And I was waiting for a bird to sit on my hand. Like I literally thought, if I sing like Snow White, what will happen to me is what happens to her in the movie, which is the bird is going to sit on my hand. And I would do it. I would like sit and I would hold my finger up, like kind of waiting for some fucking little bird to land on. It never happened. A bird never landed on my finger, but I would sing. So I did, right? Like I totally
Your
bought
poor
into
parents, you know.
And so my sense is like that was kind of right. Like I suppose that's one of the moments where they're like, put gloves on that girl, you know, like that. She needs to be protected from herself. Like conceal, don't feel, don't let it show, don't dress up in a dress. Right? Like that's the part of you. Like we don't know what to do with it. It's the part of you that's going to get you in trouble. So I can have compassion on their motives. I think, like, you know, the world in which we live, that wasn't a safe thing. It totally made me a target.
Not a safe thing.
Not a safe thing. So in one level, I'm really thankful that my parents, like, to a certain degree, gave me tools to keep me safe. At another level, it's like when Elsa rips off the gloves, there's a part of me that's like, yep. Yes.
Yeah.
Tear them off. Let it go, right? Like you've got to figure out a way to claim this thing as a source of your power, because otherwise it will be the thing that kills you, right? Yeah. Otherwise it is the thing that will cause destruction to you and the people you care about. But the only way for you, I mean, I suppose at that level, the only way for Elsa to be a tool of her own redemption and the redemption of the people around her is by claiming the source of her power and using it as a redemptive means of connecting to the world, which I guess is kind of what she does, right?
I guess. And then the power really is the divinity within. I mean, I think that's the Christ within, to talk in more Christian terms, that that is what to let go. Not Christ in the sense of moral exemplar, but Christ in the sense of back to St. Irenaeus.
An actualized human life.
Human being fully alive is the glory of God, according to St. Irenaeus.
That would be the sort of the atonement theory, that it is actually the incarnation that is the atonement, right? It is God becoming human. This is almost a sort of Eastern, this is the divinization, I suppose. Eastern Christianity is a little more, right? Like the project here is for us to look to Christ as our example of what it means to be a human being who has become so connected with God that they become a son of God, and that actually, to a certain degree, is a pathway that is available to each of us. Maybe not to be, right, like, you know, the second person of the Trinity, but to be divinized. Right? That is how we are redeemed. And that, in that sense, Elsa does give us an image of what a savior looks like, what a redeemed human being can be. Somebody fully in control of her powers, and also able to then use them with discernment, right? To use them for the upbuilding of. That's what you see at the end, right? Like she's figured out a way to create a skating rink in summer, and all the people of Arendelle come and they like have this lovely moment, and she's at the center of a community, and they all love her. I mean, what a beautiful image of the redeemed community. It's not just about Elsa and Anna, and then they go off to live happily ever after in the sunset. It's actually about Allendale. This is about like the town. It's about the entire society coming to some kind of peace with itself, and able to incorporate now the gifts of this person who had been called a monster. Turns out that monster gift is what creates a great skating rink for everybody in the summer. They love it.
I love it. Frozen. There you go.
Frozen. There you go.
All right. Thanks.
Yeah, so sorry, parents, but, hopefully, next time your kid puts that on for the 17,000th time, You might think about the ways in which they are being religiously formed.
And if you find yourself singing "Let It Go," just let it go. I mean, it's a great
song when you're constipated.
Until next time.
Until next time.
The Gospel of Musical Theater is a production of Trinity Episcopal Cathedral in Portland, Oregon. Join Peter and Nathan every other Friday right here in your podcast feed, and connect with us on Instagram and Twitter at Gospel of MT. Learn more and support us at trinity-episcopal.org/podcasts. See you next time.